You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is a Locked On crossover. Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and Locked On Baylor. Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech, as the Red Raiders are just lying in wait now in Kansas City in the Big 12 tournament, waiting to see who they're going to play. Someone's going to duke it out with Baylor, and the winner gets the opportunity to face the great Texas Tech Red Raiders. We will talk about that matchup, talk about these two programs in general, maybe going in a little bit of a different direction, and then we'll have to get to some football too and looking at some preseason outlooks for both these teams. But we bring in Chris Level because he's at every Tech game. He's calling every Tech basketball game. He knows this team inside and out. Chris, do you have any preference on what team Tech would play in their first matchup on Thursday?
Well, Grant will probably face one of his friends in either Scott Drew or Jerome Tang. I mean, that's it. This has got to be a weird bracket set up for Scott Drew because he's more than likely he could face two of his closest friends in the industry. And
they got to be colleagues this week, Scott. They have to be colleagues, former colleagues.
Yeah, that's right. So no, I don't. The conference tournament is what it is, right? It's great for fans. We will sit back and watch all the games and probably lean into the results a bit more than we should. It's a necessary evil. It's a moneymaker for the league and for schools, all that stuff. And I think coaches probably don't prefer it at the end of the day, but it's just one of those things where everybody – you got to go mess with it. And if you're going to show up, you might as well try to win, right? And for some, it's a vehicle to try to improve or get in the tournament. I think from Texas Tech's standpoint, I don't know how much harm they could do to themselves. They're probably going to be a 3 or a 4 seed in the NCAAs, maybe a 2 if you squint and you were to win a couple at least and other things were to happen. I don't know if there's a preference there. I think that Baylor will be a handful no matter what, just because it's when you've got a lottery pick, on that stage, I just think guys play to the venues sometimes. And I think VJ Edgecombe, who didn't see the Red Raiders the first time, would obviously be a handful.
Yeah, I certainly hope that's the case because you mentioned it there. He didn't play Tech in that first game. It's a game that kind of got away from Baylor towards the end of it out there at the USA. And also, earlier in the season when he was playing in some, big-time matchups, obviously take that with a grain of salt early in the season versus this time of year. But, the Gonzaga game on the road, game 1, you've got Arkansas and John Calipari in an NBA arena in game 2. And he was still like the passive VJ. He was VJ, the college freshman who was playing his first 2 games. And I think there was – after that first wave, kind of Scott Drew getting on him of being like, hey, you're the best player out here. Okay. You're the most talented player on the floor. You don't need to defer as much as you do. And it took a while, but he certainly came around to it in the conference schedule. And that will be interesting to see kind of this stage for a guy like VJ Edgecombe, that it's kind of a fresh start in front of this, this big arena, all the reporters there, that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting. And you guys know how I feel about the Big 12 conference tournament. I'm just not a huge fan of it in any power conference, to be honest with you. I would love if teams 6 through 16 played. And I know that's no guarantee that you just have 5 teams every year, but it kind of is in the Big 12. And looking at it from Tech standpoint, you mentioned it there. There's not a ton for them to gain, probably monetarily anyway, in terms of a seeding. But for a team like a Tech or an Arizona or BYU, maybe on the outside of that too, where you've had a good season, especially Tech, right? You've had a really good season. You're just out of the reach of that regular season championship. Does it mean something to Grant McCasland and staff maybe that on the end of the weekend you could have the Big 12 champion hat, the Big 12 champion shirt, and you're cutting down nets?
I think sure it would. But what did it take to get that done? How much did it take out of you? And that's just the unknown that you just don't know. Because I think I think Texas Tech is slated to play in either Wichita or Denver based on geography if they fall in that 2, 3, or 4 seed. And those games are Thursday and Saturday the week after. So it's not a Friday, Sunday. That extra day, I think, could be massive. I've seen, Texas Tech in 2019, they shared the league title in the regular season. They go up there, they lose on Thursday night, and then they go all the way to the championship game in the Final Four. 3 years ago in Mark Adams' first year, they played in the championship game and lost a close one to Kansas, and then they took that one and they went to the Sweet 16. So I've seen it all different. I don't know. I just think that if you were to tell me that you could cut down nets and all that and it not really take too much out of you and not get anybody dinged up, I would say, heck yeah, it's worth it, because they've never won this conference tournament. And really, call it what it is. This is the Kansas and Iowa State Invitational, typically in most years. That's just what it is. So there's been a few other teams sprinkled throughout there that have made some noise, but
typically it's the home teams.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this is the first year where you may not see either one of those two teams win it. I mean, I think that, if you were, because you mentioned the winner of that BYU, BYU, I guess would that be? No, Kansas game, I think is going to cause some problems for, Houston. And I think BYU is a team that's just kind of scary right now. Iowa State, I think, is got to beat BYU to get to that. So anyway, there's some teams on the outside here, and I just don't know what to make of Arizona. But I think Houston winning, it's not going to surprise anybody. And I just don't know what to think about Texas Tech. But I mean, there'll be some people that do think they have a chance to make a bit of a run here. So we'll just kind of see.
Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting part of the Big 12 and the respect that it gets. There's not really a team on the bubble right now. Like Cincinnati's not in. They're on the fringes of the bubble. So if they win this tournament, obviously that's how they're going to get in. That's their only way. Baylor would be the next team that you would see maybe on the bubble, so to speak, as a 10 seed right now. And
and that's what I was going to ask you. Is that I've seen everything from they're firmly in to I've seen them being in but having to go to Dayton. What's the thought here as far as where the seed would be or how much they can improve it based on their standing in Kansas City?
Yeah, I think they're in. I don't think they drop out. I mean, there is a world losing in the first round of it that you're out, and maybe some other craziness happens in another conference and someone gets in that shouldn't have gotten in. There is that possibility. I doubt it. And in terms of improving the seeding, I talked about on my show yesterday. If they get in or if they win this conference tournament, which they've never done, that probably flips the line for you. You're on the 10 right now. It could flip you to a 7. It could be that beneficial to you. Probably more likely an 8. And at this point, I just don't know how much of a difference that is for this team. It's we knew coming into this year that this Baylor team had a ton of talent. It hasn't been realized yet. That's why they're on the 10 line. So if that talent is going to come together, they can beat a 7 seed or a 9 seed. So I don't know how much of a difference it'll make. They're kind of in this weird limbo. Any win will help them for sure. But I just don't know how big a jump it would be. I think you'd need to win the whole thing to make it a beneficial jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that would take 4 games in 4 days?
Yeah. Then when we go into what we were just talking about is that worth it? Or, those teams that make it to the Big 12 championship game and don't win, I think would tell you that's not worth it. Houston was in that situation last year and they ended up being pretty banged up going into the tournament. So, especially for a case like Tech where you guys are saying, this is a team that can make a run. It's I wouldn't jeopardize that or try to jeopardize. That's not saying go in and lose, just try to lose. But it's
well, and the tricky part is I don't you almost have to just sit guys out, because I think guys, if you're in that venue and you get a bunch of NBA people in the stands and all the meet, right, it's just typically it's a pretty juiced up environment as you go along in the week. And I just don't know how you kind of take your foot off the gas because guys are competitors, and you don't, but I think there's some stages in the game where like, okay, we don't have it today. I'm backing off. I think that's where you kind of make those decisions within the game if it just is not going your way. Because last year Darion Williams for Texas Tech got hurt in the first round on that Thursday against BYU. Didn't play against Houston. You get beat up in the semifinals by those Cougs, and they were beat up as well. And then obviously Texas Tech ended up losing against NC State in the first round of the tournament, who incidentally won 5 games in 5 days, and then went all the way to the Final Four with it. And then a year later, fire their head coach. So,
like, if my argument is Dracula, that okay, NC State last year is the garlic bread and the dagger through the heart of my argument for conference tournaments, which I absolutely hate. I just hate that they did that to us. Anyway, Baylor season, hopefully a blip on the radar. Texas Tech definitely in the ascension under Grant McCasland. Let's look at where these two programs are headed. Let's do that next on this Locked On crossover.
First, today's episode brought to you by TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. And while they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. And while you go about your day, it's all happening with no stressing, no worrying, and no waiting. Now, this is Taxes with Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
All right, Chris Level, Locked On Texas Tech. I'm Cam Stewart, Locked On Baylor. Mentioned it. This is not the season that Baylor was hoping for. Preseason top 10 and now on the 10 line. Not exactly the season that you were expecting coming into the year. And Tech was kind of like they were last year under Grant McCasland in his first year, kind of lurking in the shadows in the preseason, not getting a ton of love, although the JT Toppin move was a big one, and it turned out to be a very big one as the Big 12 Player of the Year. And now we're talking about Baylor could really could move up on the seed line with a Big 12 tournament championship, and Tech, it doesn't do much. You're preparing for a big run here. So from your perspective, Chris, as someone who, does every Tech game, has seen every team in this league pretty intimately, do you think, just from what we've seen over the last few years, that this is a blip on the radar for Baylor? Before I get your opinion on Tech, do you think this is just a blip on the radar for Baylor, or could this be indicative of something bigger?
No, I think closer to the blip. I mean, I do think it's tricky this day and age because Scott has really gone in on these stud freshmen, and I think that creates some. The payoff can be enormous, or the payoff can be a bit like, okay. I mean, and the idea there is that you get really talented players, but then there's some growing pains that go along with it, but then they're playing their best right now. And so you create a ton of upside for yourself. I just think it's different now than it used to be, because the one and dones were, I mean, that's what you use. Like you heck yeah, man. I mean, you love having that. Yes. Yeah. And now everybody's so much older. And the experience of these teams, it's just a bit trickier. So it creates a bit of an interesting dynamic. So, but I would, he's just too good of a coach and too consistent, I would think, for this to, and so many people would be going, well, you're in the tournament and you're like talking about how it's just not been realized and you're in, and there's just a lot of programs that would love to be in that conversation. But compared to what Baylor has been in recent years, certainly not what we're used to seeing.
And in terms of the 5-star thing, I've mentioned this a few times, and I know you'll agree here. It's a tough thing to stop doing. It's a tough thing to just be like, okay, yeah, this isn't working. We're just going to stop getting the best high school basketball players in the country. It's a real tough thing to stop. And I don't just say this because you're on the pod. I do believe this is coming down the pike here. Tech's going to have their shot at those kinds of guys here in the near future, because I'm a huge Grant McCasland guy. And I think obviously he has stepped in and has kind of fit the identity of what Tech basketball was winning with. I think a little bit more skill than you had maybe in the Mark Adams era, but still kind of that will play any style you want kind of thing, and coming out with wins. They're winning big games on the road. It's tough to intimidate this Texas Tech team, and it was the same way last year too. What is the feeling around Grant McCasland? I'm sure obviously good around Lubbock, but in terms of what this program can become, I mean, we're talking about billion-dollar sales happening out there with some big Tech benefactors. How much is that going to affect this Tech basketball program that looked like it might have been treading water a few years ago?
Yeah, and it's been. I don't know if I was expecting this. I've been on the broadcast before when this program went 1-17 in the Big 12 about 14 years ago, and they were arguably one of the worst Power 4 or 5 teams at the time in the country. Billy Gillespie was off doing whatever, and you had an interim head coach, and then Tubby Smith came in here. But this is now 4 different coaches in about an 8 or 9 year span that have taken you to the NCAA tournament. And that says something about your program, not just one guy, and that's the identity. So I do think that they've got, great facilities. They're well-resourced. I mean, all those things. And I think that Grant has brought something that was desperately needed, which was stability. And they, with Mark and Chris, the exits were dramatic. Yeah. In both cases. And I just think you needed some no drama stability and a good fit. He's got a lot of ties here. Obviously his wife was here, and Grant was here under Coach Dickey years ago in grad school and GA and all that stuff. And so there's ties here. But I think that, that's what I would say is he's just been such a good fit. But as long as you're well-resourced, you can compete as long as you choose correctly on the players you bring in, like a Toppin, like an Elijah Hawkins, and some of the choices they made, I think their roster construction was big time. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sitting here in November and December. I didn't see this. I didn't see you're beating up on Bethune-Cookman, or you're playing. I'm not sure if I'm looking at the player of the year or a second place team in the Big 12 conference.
A team that's going to beat Houston on the road
without him,
yes,
and without the player of the year.
Yeah,
I mean, that is one of the craziest. I think people will forget that years from now. That makes no sense on paper. Right. It makes no sense whatsoever. Houston was completely healthy. You take away the head coach and the player of the year 3.5 minutes into the game, and you go beat them at their place in overtime. It's just unbelievable. And I still, as I'm watching it, I still couldn't really process or believe it. But that's probably the first sign I was like, okay, I think these guys are legit. They have a chance. But yeah, I think thumbs up around here. Everybody was real nervous around here last spring whenever Scott Drew was sending planes out to Lexington and all that, because I think I think Grant had already gotten a call. I think that there was probably already conversation.
Okay, good, because this is my next question. This is going to lead me to my next question. I hate to interrupt you, but I wanted to preface it like this. It was pretty close. Like, if Scott Drew took that job last year at Kentucky, do you think that Grant McCasland, let's say, could have taken that job? Do you think Tech would have given him an offer he couldn't refuse after 1 year?
Well, I mean, and I think that would have been the one school. And now, and my answer may be different. Like now, if it were to happen again,
2 years is much different than one. Yeah. But
I think he would have had a big time decision to make. I do. His daughter goes to Baylor. Mm-hmm. And he's very fond of his time there and the whole deal. But that's one that, I think that, because I think if Rodney Terry is let go, I think Grant is on a list where Texas will call him. Yeah. I don't think Grant would be a fit in Austin, but I mean, if you're Texas, he's a Texas guy, state of Texas guy. I think he'd be one of the people that you would at least reach out to and say, hey man, I'm not trying to start anything, but I mean, that makes sense. You just, those are easy dots to connect, but Baylor would have been the one, because I think with him, it's really about fit, and you can't, and it's about being happy. I don't think this is a guy that's in this profession to try to just make the most money he possibly can. Mm-hmm. There are some that are. I think it's about happy and fit, and like if we've got what we need, well, we can go do it big, and they have it here. But Baylor would have been the one. But having said that, I also think that it's tricky for Grant or whoever to be the guy that follows Scott Drew.
Yeah.
You know the old saying, you want to be the guy that follows the guy, if that's what you are looking at. And so the immediate replacement, whenever that is, and we may be now that he re-upped and he's got more NIL money and all the stuff that came with that flirtation with Kentucky. I mean, he may be in that seat for the next 5 to 8 years, whatever, or longer, and has every right to sit there as long as he wants.
Yeah. And you talk about fit, just real quick on the end of it. It's like Grant would have been a good fit. Obviously it's his alma mater and he's been there, and like you said, his daughter goes there, but most people, whether either fan base wants to admit it or not, most people that are at the helm of either Baylor or Tech would also be a good fit at the other place. A lot of the battle is similar. So I wanted your opinion on that as someone who knows Grant pretty well and has obviously seen every game he's coached there. I think that would have been fascinating. Who knows, man? Indiana's going to come knocking. You never know. Chris. But let's talk some football, because I think that's a better spot for Baylor to talk about who the dark horse is for the Big 12 coming into this season and how Texas Tech will get over the hump this year with Joey McGuire. Let's do it next on this Locked On Crossover.
First, today's episode brought to you by Roy. And before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. Now with Roy, you get to be part of the change and support Texas Tech athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app has given fans control, no more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Just download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Texas Tech athletes with transparency and trust. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your team and your favorite athletes.
Baylor, Texas Tech, Cam Stewart, Chris Level, crossing it over for you. Let's talk football a little bit. I have this story, speaking of football. My dad worked with this guy for years who was a big fan of like obscure sports, and not that this is wicked obscure or anything, but he was big into soccer, like MLS. And he used to tell my dad, he'd be like, Bill, you better get onto this. It's the sport of the future. And my dad would say, and it always will be. And this is like the third or fourth year in a row I've heard pretty much the whole Joey McGuire era, Texas Tech, dark horse to win the Big 12 in football. And I'm about to say, Chris Level, and they always will be, because I've been on the Tech train the last couple of years. Their over-under in wins, according to Vegas, is actually higher than Baylor's, 8.5 to 7.5. So let's start with the Red Raiders. Is this the year they really are a dark horse to win the Big 12, which will take 10 to 11 wins now?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know what you thought about those over-under win totals. I keep being fascinated by what Utah is projected to do.
I can't believe it.
I'm like, maybe we're the dumb ones. I just don't understand it. I really don't.
You watch too much.
I guess so. I mean, Texas Tech doesn't have an Auburn-like game on their non-conference. They've had some tough games in recent years in the non-conference, like one mixed in, and then you've got the regional game and all that stuff. But they should go 3-0 in the non-conference. So really, when I see that over/under win total, it's like, okay, your over/under win total is 5.5 in the league. Mm-hmm. They went over that last year. They had 6 league wins. And obviously didn't get past your Bears, and came up short against TCU, and then obviously the Colorado game, and they just needed one more.
Yep.
That's I think that's what was so frustrating to Joey specifically, is that you beat both of the teams that played for the championship. You beat them, and you're the only one that could say that. And like, it just took one more win, and you would have been in Arlington, which you've never been able to do. I don't know if they are really like. I guess they're in the group. I don't know if I've seen like dark horse. I think people got burned 2 years ago when there was a lot of chatter about the Red Raiders and they were really old.
Yep.
I didn't see as much last year. I think we were all kind of wondering what Texas Tech was going to be, but it's to me, there's like a group of 5 to 6, and I think Baylor is in that group too. But it like, how do you look at Arizona State and BYU is not the top, teams based on what they bring back, based on how they did last year? I think Kansas State, is in that group, and I think Vegas agrees. And then there's like the Texas Techs, the Baylors, the Iowa States, sitting there. And then there's like
who don't feel that far off, right? With this conference,
completely agree.
It's like I don't want to say 1A, but close to it, right? With those groupings.
Yeah. Did you agree with the over/under win total for Baylor? Did you think, oh yeah, that's easy, an easy over? Is that okay? I can see. I mean, what was your thought there when you saw 7.5?
I honestly think it's an easy over.
Okay.
Like, I do. And I have been burned by being too confident in Baylor teams, and I am ready to get burned again because I think this is a 9-win team. I don't want to say at minimum, but I think that would be a solid year for them to win 9, just based on what they're bringing back. Obviously, like you mentioned, that non-con's difficult. You get 2 college football playoff teams in the first month of the season, and that doesn't include Auburn, who's going to be ranked to start the year just because, the people love the recruiting class and the portal class. So that those are 3 major games. That's Auburn and SMU to open the season, a 1-week break with Samford, and then Arizona State. So that's 2 of them are at home, which is nice. And I think the back half of that schedule kind of works better towards Baylor kind of sneaking up on the committee a little bit. It does stink for us that Tech is not on the schedule this year. That's one taken off the board. Unfortunately, we would have really loved to have gone out to Lubbock again.
And I would have loved to come to Waco again. Touche. Yeah, but
Arlington, can we settle on that?
It makes no sense that these 2 teams and Texas Tech's not playing TCU either.
Oh, that's just rotten, man. And if I'm not mistaken, all 3 non-con, non-Texas teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah.
is there one Texas team? Is Houston the only one on the schedule?
I think that's right. Yep, that's right.
That's just a bummer, man. I mean, that's Tech's fault, but that's a bummer.
I know. And 2 years ago, they didn't play Oklahoma State, which I guess as far as proximity goes, they're probably the closest or one of, if it's not TCU. So, it just like you're about to switch up your basketball schedule and go back to 18 games. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's going to probably be a thing permanently. Like who's not playing who? Who do you get? I mean, that's a. Yeah. Because that could, as much as anything, determine the league race, just like this football scenario when, who played who, where'd you play them, who did you not have to play, and I kind of hate that. I get it, but this is the realignment conference bloat that we are all dealing with, and you just you do the best you can with it. But there's 2 questions I have for you. What was the thought around Waco when that Auburn game got moved to a Friday night?
Yeah.
This is like in August 29th, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the tough part is, Chris, as you know, it's the first Friday of high school football season.
I am well aware. Yeah. And in the state of Texas, people get really grouchy about such things. And so I was curious, like, because it's not Dave Aranda's fault or Mac Rhodes' fault. This is the TV contract. And when you want to sign up to take all that money, I was very thankful that Texas Tech didn't have a home Friday night game, though, this year, just because I think that you fight getting a crowd, and it's just a weird dynamic.
And it stinks. A double-edged sword. I mean, I hate Friday night college football games because I'm a big high school football guy. Yep. And obviously my time in Texas, I was always covering high school football. And to your point, maybe outside of the big UT, it's like, you are going to be battling somewhat for a crowd. I'm not saying the place is going to be empty, but you've got high school parents and high school players. Like they don't miss this. And if if you're giving, the great people of the Permian Basin the option of going to the Permian game or driving up 2 hours to go to the Tech game, it's not an easy choice. So I actually don't like at all having Friday night games. But the other end of that sword is the rest of the country doesn't deal as much with that problem of high school football, and it's going to be on national television, and people are going to watch it.
Yeah.
And the way you do that in week one signifies, like, you know how they do. I mean, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you have
Monday.
a couple of big games, and then Monday you have a signature one as well. So that's where college football is trying to eat up the whole weekend before the pros start. And that means you are the signature game of Friday night. And I think that's important for Baylor to have a home game, guaranteed night game, although the first week is always a night game for safety reasons, I think. Like, you have to play a night game. And that's going to be a huge deal. So I think that is, in this case, only a good thing for Baylor. But yeah, I hate playing on Friday nights.
Yeah, I just, I saw that slate. And I just was, I think if you're going to be the road team in a Friday night scenario, I think you love it.
Sure,
because a lot of
right.
what you had just said. And the other question I had for you was the Richard Reese thing expected? That was a bit like before you get going in spring, and odd timing there. He's very familiar to everybody in Big 12 country and all that stuff.
The Tech fans think he's like a Heisman candidate every year.
He's got a lot of potential running that wide zone and all that, but then it's just like it just never really kept going. And I just was curious what your thoughts were.
Yeah, wasn't too surprised by it. Kind of a logjam at that position. I think Bryson Washington is going to be maybe the best running back in the conference this year. And right behind him, Dawson Pendergrass is pretty good too. Like, this is as close as we're going to get to the Pony Express in a while for Baylor. And so Richard Reese, while talented and a guy who seriously seemed to have loved Baylor, like didn't make any excuses or anything, just was falling down the pecking order. I thought it was a weird time to enter the portal, obviously with the limitations on spring football, because of when he entered it just a week or two ago. But yeah, not too unexpected. I'm interested to see where he lands, because he does have a whole year of tape. It was 2 years ago, but a whole year of tape of like, I can cut through a major conference. I hit 972 yards at a major conference as a true freshman. I find that to be intriguing, but yeah, not too surprised that he's headed out. No more hat trick touchdown performances against the Red Raiders. So
yeah, I hate that.
I think the 3 touchdowns were like a total of 5 yards too, which was great. Like,
all in the red zone.
Real highlight, real stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this will be an interesting football season, and Chris, we'll have to talk before that gets going, because it's a really, like you said in there, I mean, these two teams are in similar positions. Obviously, Tech went hard on the portal and did very well in it. Baylor brings a lot back from a good team from last year. It'll be fascinating as this season gets closer. But that's Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech, who's in Kansas City. So you can get plenty of Big 12 tournament coverage from him, and certainly he'll indulge in some good barbecue, right?
Yeah, if you're going up there, Q39 or Jack Stack, those are the only two that I would recommend. Some of the other stuff is just I can't, because the only reason I say that about those two places is very similar to what we do in Texas.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, that's right. Because like the whole Kansas City barbecue thing, yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't sign off. So yeah, they've got a very much overrated.
It's tough to compete with West Texas barbecue too.
Well, it is. I mean, yeah, just Texas in general. Yeah, I mean, it's just slow cook that meat, man, is solid.
Oh, that's good stuff, man. Yeah. That's good stuff. Chris, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate always crossing over with you.
Yes, sir. Back at you, man. Keep hope alive, and we'll do it again another time.
We sure will. You can follow either one of us on our respective shows coming at you 5 days a week. And as you know, Chris, a little bit extra there as well. That's Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech. I'm Kim Stewart of Locked On Baylor. This has been a Locked On Crossover.